And here I was expecting to see the classic tale of forbidden love between strontium and molybdenum. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about Pixar's 2023 animated romantic comedy drama, Elemental. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Elemental stars the vocal talents of Leah Lewis, Mamoudou Athie, and Ronnie del Carmen, and was directed by Peter Sohn. It tells a story of fire element, Ember Lumen, who must work with watery Wade Ripple to save her family's store, only to discover that they have more in common than expected. Since 1995, Pixar has released 27 feature-length films. Most have been original movies, about a third have been sequels, prequels, or spin-offs, but they've all managed to offer something slightly different. That in itself is pretty impressive, but it becomes even more impressive when you realize how many different stories they've been able to create using the same basic concept. There have been a few exceptions, but the vast majority of Pixar movies stem from a single question. What if blank had feelings? Toys, bugs, fish, cars, robots, souls, even wondering what if feelings had feelings. In Elemental, these feelings, unsurprisingly, belong to classical elements. Each of these films have their own unique components and different nuances to them, but with so many movies following the same basic concept, it's understandable that some people might be a bit sick of the formula. I am not one of those people, though, because I like seeing all the different ways that Pixar is able to creatively apply this idea. Not every movie becomes a top-tier favorite of mine, but even mid-tier Pixar is better than or equal to top-tier of many other studios. As I mentioned, Elemental does employ the what if blank had feelings formula, but as expected, there's a lot more to the story than just emotional fire and clouds. This film is an interesting amalgamation of ideas, being part father-daughter story, part immigrant tale, and part opposites attract romantic comedy. These different storylines all exist at the same time and kind of fight each other for the audience's attention. At times, they enhance one another, but oftentimes they pull focus away from one another, giving the film a very simplistic structure. The movie lacks a villain in the traditional sense, which is fine and could work, but instead there's a lackluster looming threat that gets thrown in, which feels more than a little unnecessary, only further splitting our storyline focus. As a result, many of the individual components of the story feel a bit rushed, including the central romance. Ember and Wade do have chemistry, and they're cute and sweet together, but the film just doesn't devote enough time to their relationship to make the big moments as moving as you would expect or hope. Unlike the ever-emotional Wade, this was one of the rare Pixar movies that didn't get any tears out of me. Although there are some story issues, Elemental is one of those films where it's clear the story wasn't really the priority. That might sound like a bad thing, and I'm sure it is to quite a few people, but this movie is much more concept and theme driven. Because of that, the thematic elements are all very on the nose and obvious, but not abrasively so. With the opposites attract aspect of Ember and Wade's relationship, we get some very classic interpersonal and coming-of-age themes, which, although very familiar, are still impactful here. Where this film really excels, though, both conceptually and thematically, is with its core immigrant story. We see Ember's parents come to Element City in search of a better life. They arrive with nothing. They don't speak the language. Their names are changed by an immigration agent who can't and doesn't try to understand them. They face discrimination and xenophobia for being fire people, and yet they become successful and help found the community that would become Firetown as more and more fire people immigrate to the city. I mean, that's such a classic but important immigrant story that countless people and families through the centuries can relate to. And then it goes one step further by looking at how that affects the next generation. Their beliefs and values, their expectations and dreams, their sense of self versus sense of family. There's some big, deep stuff buried in this film as just a relatively small piece of the whole. After 27 films and nearly 3 decades in the filmmaking game, it comes as no surprise that the animation in a new Pixar film is superb. Given the slightly more abstract nature of imbuing inanimate objects with life in an entirely constructed reality, this is one of those Pixar movies that goes for a slightly more cartoonish look than a photorealistic look, but it's still really impressive. The fire animation was especially mesmerizing to me, but it was really interesting to see the light refraction and translucency of water and water characters in the story too. And then, of course, we've got the world building. Element City is so expansive, but we only see a small fraction of it. Most of our time is spent in Firetown, which is an interesting creation itself, but there's something really cool about seeing the infrastructure of a fictional city like this. That might just be a weird me thing, but it definitely left me wishing we had the opportunity to see and explore even more of the city. I suspect that Elemental is going to be a generally liked but not loved Pixar film. In the global ranking of Pixar movies, it's probably going to find itself somewhere in the middle. But that's okay. I know I've said this in past Pixar reviews, but not every film the studio puts out has to be some life-altering tearjerker. Some of their movies manage to hit on something so universal that it deeply impacts nearly everybody who sees the film. But some of their other movies take a more specific approach that connects with a smaller subset of people in that same deep way. The death of a parent in Onward, a teenage girl going through puberty and turning red, the immigration story here in Elemental. These stories have all come from very specific and personal experiences. Not every viewer will have experienced these same things, so they might not get the same thing out of the film or connect with it quite as much. But the people out there who can connect with it and personally relate to it get something so much more. They get to see their life and their experiences on screen. And they have something to point to when trying to convey those experiences to other people. So yeah, this might be a somewhat mid-tier Pixar movie for me, but this is going to be the Pixar movie for so many other people. And I think that's amazing. I hope Pixar sticks with this trend of making very specific, personal to the filmmaker stories. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one has got to be the themes. Overall, the thematic elements of this film are a touch heavy-handed and in-your-face compared to Pixar's usual offerings, so that might irritate some viewers, but I thought the thematic components were still strong. The coming-of-age, wanting to forge your own path theme is a bit familiar, as is the opposites attract romance and racial allegories, but where the film really excels is with its immigrant story. Yes, it's got that American dream idea to it, but it captures the hardships and cruelties of that concept too. The xenophobia, the forced assimilation and isolation, but also the sense of community that arises from that. It's a story that will be relatable to countless families, whether their great-grandparents came through Ellis Island in the early 1900s, like me, their parents immigrated to the US in the 70s, like director Peter Sohn, or they themselves arrived just last year. The second pro is the world building. In a story like this, where humans don't exist, there's just so much creative potential. We see things that are familiar to us as humans, like city infrastructure for instance, but it gets to be designed with something other than humans in mind. Element City has so many cool things that are just extremely interesting to me. There's some sight gags and a lot of element puns, which I personally enjoy, but there's also just a lot of creativity on display with how the city and its people function. We spend most of our time in Firetown, with only occasional glimpses to other regions of the city, and while that's frustrating on a certain level, it also leaves a lot open to the imagination. On the con side, the biggest issue is how rushed the story is. I don't think it was really a time constraint issue related to the film's length, because I've seen shorter, better-paced movies, many of them from Pixar. Instead, I think this rushed feeling stems from the story structure, and the inclusion of one or two too many story threads. Putting a family drama, an immigrant story, and a rom-com into one film was already a bit much, but the addition of the race against the clock threat just spread the focus a little too thin. So not only does the romance end up feeling very rushed, but the development of and transitions within the father-daughter relationship do as well. Before I give you my rating recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Elemental or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them, if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Elemental 3.5 out of 5 paws. On this first watch, I'm right on the border between 3 and 3.5. The story is familiar and tips more towards 3 paws from an entertainment perspective, but the immigrant experience, simple but cute romantic comedy elements, and animation fans, the rating flames up half a paw for me. I would recommend Elemental to fans of Pixar's simpler stories. This is one of their films that's based more on concept and feeling than it is on an intricate plot, but it effectively tackles those concepts it sets out to. It won't be a film that'll deeply connect with everyone, but the immigrant story will resonate profoundly with many people, and the simple sweetness of the rom-com will induce smiles and even more. If you liked Elemental, I would recommend An American Tail. This downbeat animated musical follows a mouse family as they immigrate to America in search of a better life. It's a surprisingly mature film, but is one of the few other animated movies that really focuses on the immigrant experience. If you like the world building on display with Element City, you should check out Zootopia. Not only does it feature some excellent biome-based world building in its namesake city, but it's another allegorical tale about stereotypes, discrimination, and unexpected partnerships. And if you want to step away from animation, but stick with a good culture clash rom-com, you might want to watch My Big Fat Greek Wedding. There are a number of plot similarities, and it's clear that the characters of Ember and Wade, as well as aspects of their interactions with each other's families, were inspired by Tula and Ian in this film. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Elemental? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie about an immigrant? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information on this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.